Disney has a way of sneaking grown-up themes into movies you thought were made just for kids. Bedknobs and Broomsticks isn't just a magical adventure with flying beds and quirky spells. It's a strange mashup of whimsy and wartime terror. But here's the kicker. While kids see a playful fantasy, adults notice the politics, the tension, and even the social commentary buried beneath the charm. So, what really hides inside this so-called family classic? Let's dig into 30 surprising details. The film's dark World War II backdrop. At first glance, kids just see a quaint English countryside with evacuated children learning magic. But adults know this isn't just a story, it's rooted in the very real trauma of World War II. When Eglantine Price takes in the Rawlins children, it isn't because she's a warm-hearted caretaker, it's because their city has been bombed and they've been displaced. The opening sets the tone. Streets filled with evacuees, rationing, and fear just beneath the cheery surface. What's striking is how the film balances fantasy with such a grim setting. Unlike Mary Poppins, which floats happily above its Edwardian backdrop, Bedknobs and Broomsticks refuses to hide the danger. Adults immediately catch how bizarre it is to blend Nazi invasions with talking animals and magical bedknobs. But that contrast is what makes the movie so unforgettable. For grown-ups, the flying bed isn't just a trick, it's a desperate escape from the horrors of war, anti-Nazi propaganda themes. Children cheer when the suits of armor come alive and charge against the invading Germans. But adults see this for what it really is, a piece of wartime propaganda dressed up in Disney magic. Released in the early 70s, but set in the 1940s, the movie recreates the atmosphere of Britain under threat. The whole climax, where Price's magic summons medieval weapons to repel Nazis, is straight out of a patriotic fever dream. For younger audiences, the Nazi soldiers are cartoonish villains, almost like extras in a comic book. But grown-ups realize that this was Disney playing into the larger cultural memory of the war, making sure the good versus evil message was loud and clear. The humor, the ridiculousness of the Phantom Army, all serve as a way to keep kids entertained while reassuring older audiences that Britain's resolve, even symbolically, could not be broken. Adults notice how heavy-handed the message is, but also how bold Disney was to mix politics with fantasy, subtle political satire. On the surface, the Ministry of War scenes look like harmless comedy, with stuffy officials bumbling about and dismissing Miss Price. But adults know satire when they see it. These men, supposed to represent authority, come off as clueless, pompous, and wildly out of touch with the real crisis happening outside their offices. For children, it's just another roadblock in Price's magical journey. For adults, it's a cheeky dig at bureaucracy. Even the idea that a self-taught witch with second-hand spells could save the nation while the officials bicker in meetings is telling. It suggests that true defense came from ordinary people, not paper pushers in London. This hidden layer makes the comedy sting a little sharper for grown-ups. In a way, Bedknobs and Broomsticks is less about magic and more about resilience, the quiet jab being that the government wasn't the real savior. Class divide commentary. Kids love the Rawlins children because they're scrappy, funny, and always up to mischief. But adults see something else. A sharp contrast between these Cockney kids and Eglantine Price, the prim woman with a large country house. Their worlds couldn't be more different. They've been pulled from the rubble of bombed-out London and suddenly placed in a polished home that screams privilege. Price's initial discomfort with them isn't just about noise and manners, it's about class differences. The way Charlie, the eldest, constantly questions her authority feels like more than just childhood rebellion. It's the working-class kid clashing with middle-class propriety. Adults can sense the undertone. Wartime forced unlikely groups together, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. The kids eventually learn to trust her, and she learns to bend, but the commentary is clear. Disney might not have shouted it, but the class commentary lingers every time the Rawlins push back. Eglantine's spinster stereotype. To a child, Miss Price is just the stern lady learning magic. But adults see the weight of her character. She's the stereotypical spinster of her era, living alone in the countryside, dabbling in hobbies, and keeping people at arm's length. In the early 20th century, unmarried women over a certain age were often portrayed as cold or eccentric. Price fits this mold perfectly. Her journey into witchcraft isn't just about spells, it's about control, independence, and carving out her own life without relying on a husband. Yet, the film can't quite resist pushing her toward romance with Professor Brown. Adults recognize the awkwardness. She's written as an independent powerhouse, but the story bends her back toward a traditional role by the end. Kids don't notice that tug of war, but grown-ups can see the cultural blueprint at work. In many ways, Price is both a product of her time and a quiet challenge to it. Gender role reversal. For kids, it's funny when Miss Price takes charge while Professor Brown fumbles along, but adults see something groundbreaking. In a film released in 1971, you've got a woman with all the authority, confidence, and knowledge, and a man who is almost completely reliant on her. Brown may have the charisma, but it's Price who does the heavy lifting, casting spells, protecting the children, and ultimately saving Britain from invasion. This wasn't a common sight back then. Disney movies usually placed women in supportive roles, not front and center as the true leader. Here, the tables turn. The lady of the house is the general, and the man is her assistant. For adults, this reversal is sharp, refreshing, and just a little bit cheeky. It's almost as if Disney slipped in a sly commentary about women taking on new roles during and after World War II. The kids laugh at Brown's clumsy jokes, but grown-ups nod at the deeper meaning. The world doesn't just run on male authority. Hints of a feminist undertone. You wouldn't think Disney in the 70s would quietly nod to women's independence, but Bedknobs and Broomsticks has flashes of it. Miss Price isn't pining for romance, nor is she obsessed with finding her happily ever after. Instead, she's busy studying witchcraft, defending her home, and managing 3 stubborn children. Adults recognize this as unusual, especially for a company that traditionally pushed the idea of marriage as the ultimate goal. There's a confidence in Price that feels modern. She's content on her own, she knows what she wants, and she doesn't need Professor Brown to complete her. Yes, the script eventually nudges them together in a clumsy romance, but the core of her character still screams independence. To adults watching now, it feels like a quiet challenge to the traditional Disney formula. Kids just see a strict lady loosening up, but older viewers see an early version of the independent female lead that would become much more common in decades to come. David Tomlinson, reused by Disney. For children, Professor Brown is just a funny, lovable character. But adults who remember Mary Poppins immediately spot it. David Tomlinson is basically playing the same role again. His mannerisms, his bumbling charm, even the way he struts and delivers lines, feels like Mr. Banks all over. It's classic Disney recycling. After the success of Mary Poppins, the studio leaned on familiar faces and personalities to capture that same magic again. To kids, it works. They just laugh at his goofy antics. To adults, though, it can feel a little lazy. It's as if Disney thought, well, audiences loved him as Mr. Banks, so let's just copy and paste that energy. Of course, Tomlinson delivers beautifully, but grown-ups can't shake the feeling that they're watching a softer, sillier remix of a character they already knew. It's charming, yes, but also a reminder of how cautious Disney was about innovation at the time. The uneasy romance. Kids barely notice the romance subplot, but adults see how awkward it is. Price and Brown's relationship feels more like a studio note than a natural development. One moment, they're bickering like chalk and cheese. The next, they're gazing at each other in ways that feel forced. The chemistry isn't exactly sizzling, and that's the point adults pick up on. This isn't a grand love story. It's a half-hearted attempt to make sure the female lead isn't left alone at the end. In fact, it almost undercuts Price's strong independence by shoehorning her into a romance that doesn't feel earned. Adults notice the tug of war. The movie wants her to be a powerful, self-sufficient witch, but also doesn't want to end without a man on her arm. It's the kind of awkward compromise that reveals just how cautious Disney was in the early 70s about female characters breaking tradition. Abrupt editing and cuts. If the pacing feels strange, there's a reason. Adults notice the choppy storytelling, sudden transitions, and missing bits that hint at something deeper. That's because the movie was heavily cut after test screenings. Nearly 25 minutes were slashed, including entire songs and character development. For kids, this doesn't matter. They'll just roll with the story. But adults can feel the uneven flow. Characters appear and disappear with little explanation, and emotional beats sometimes fall flat. Only grown-ups recognize that the film we know is basically a compromised version. The restoration decades later revealed how much was originally lost. Adults watching today can't help but think how much stronger the movie would have been had Disney trusted its audience with a slightly longer runtime. Instead, what we got was a patchwork quilt, sometimes charming, sometimes disjointed. Portobello Road as a showcase of imperialism. To kids, Portobello Road is just a big, colorful dance number, but adults see the subtext. It's not just about buying and selling oddities, it's a parade of Britain's imperial past. Dancers from around the world suddenly show up, from Scottish bagpipers to Caribbean steel drummers, all folded neatly into a British marketplace. For adults, it's impossible not to notice how colonial influences are presented as cheerful variety acts. The scene becomes less about London culture and more about Britain's empire reaching into every corner of the globe. Kids don't think twice about it, but adults raise eyebrows at the way different cultures are, portrayed in quick, stereotyped bursts. It's entertaining, yes, but it also feels like a subtle nod to the complexities of empire, something Disney probably never expected anyone to analyze. Special effects, recycling. The magic bed, the animated sequences, the hybrid of live action with cartoons. It all feels familiar. That's because adults can instantly tell Disney was reusing tricks from Mary Poppins. The animated animals playing soccer on Naboombu look suspiciously like cousins of the penguins that danced with Julie Andrews. To kids, this doesn't matter. It's all fun and magical. But adults notice the recycling. Disney had already perfected this style in the 60s, and here they dusted it off for another round. The problem is that it doesn't feel as fresh the second time around. Adults appreciate the charm, but they also know when a studio is leaning on old formulas. It's the cinematic version of déjà vu, and while it's still delightful, it's impossible not to see the strings being pulled, the jarring shift in tone. One of the strangest things adults notice about Bedknobs and Broomsticks is how quickly it swings between tones. One moment, you're laughing at Brown's antics. The next, you're staring at Nazi soldiers sneaking into a quiet English village. Kids take these shifts in stride, but adults feel the tonal whiplash. It's not that whimsy and danger can't exist together, it's that the film often jumps without warning. A musical comedy suddenly morphs into a war drama. A silly dance routine gets followed by grim discussions of invasion. For grown-ups, the effect can be unsettling. It's as if the film couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a lighthearted fantasy or a patriotic drama. The result? A movie that feels both daring and uneven. And while kids just remember the flying bed, adults remember the whiplash that came with it. The magic is secondary to patriotism. Children think the story is about magic spells, flying beds, and animated soccer matches. Adults realize the magic is really a tool, not the message. Every spell, every enchanted object, every bit of sorcery eventually feeds into one central purpose: protecting Britain during the war. Miss Price doesn't use magic for personal gain or pure fun. Her spells are tested, refined, and ultimately unleashed in a patriotic battle to repel Nazis. That's where the heart of the story lies. The true magic is national pride, dressed up in fantasy, so children could enjoy it too. Adults notice how carefully this was structured. It isn't escapism, it's a metaphor for unity and survival. The bed knob may glitter, but the spirit underneath is unmistakably about standing strong against invasion. Kids remember the ride. Adults remember the rallying cry. The strange, melancholy ending. Kids see the ending as a victory. Nazis defeated, magic proven, all is well. Adults feel the melancholy humming beneath the triumph. The orphans still face an uncertain future. Miss Price may have found confidence, but her romance with Brown feels unresolved. The war isn't over. Danger still looms just outside the frame. There's no sugar-coated fairy tale finish. Instead, the ending carries a muted tone, reminding older viewers that real life doesn't tie up so neatly. Wartime Britain was a place of ongoing sacrifice, and the film subtly nods to that reality. Kids don't notice the subdued mood. Adults, though, feel the bittersweet message. Even victories during war are only temporary. It's a rare case where Disney let a little reality seep into the fantasy, and it leaves the film echoing longer in adult memory than most children's musicals. It's not really a kid's movie. The final thing adults notice is that Bedknobs and Broomsticks isn't really a children's movie at all. It masquerades as one, with its animated animals and sing-along numbers, but the bones of the story are built on trauma, war, and survival. Adults see how strange it is that Disney combined Nazi invasions with lighthearted musical whimsy. The result is a hybrid film that's too heavy for pure fantasy, yet too whimsical for pure drama. For kids, it's just a strange, magical ride. For adults, it's a movie that dares to wrestle with big questions under the cover of family entertainment. That's why it stands out decades later. It's not clean or simple, it's messy, daring, and unforgettable. Adults know they've watched something stranger and deeper than the average Disney offering. It's a film that hides in plain sight, pretending to be harmless while carrying an undeniable weight. And there you have it, 30 things only adults ever notice in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. From eerie ghost armies to sly digs at politics and class, this so-called children's classic is really a wartime allegory dressed in Disney colors. The next time you revisit it, watch closely. Do you see whimsy or do you see shadows? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more hidden Hollywood secrets, and share this with a fellow Disney fan who thinks they've seen it all. The truth is, few films hide magic quite like this one.